Hey, welcome everyone. I'm here, George Webb with Addy Ads.
Hi, folks.
We've on our second stop today. This is the Four Courts Irish Pub where I spoke with Deep Blackberry. Hello, Julie. Addy Ads, of course, is one of the great young up-and-coming citizen journalists, and he's here at our Charrette. Addy, what do you think of the Charrette so far?
I'm learning a lot at the Charrette. This is my first Charrette that I've attended of George's, and there's one later on this month in Michigan that I'm going to try to get to as well. But I've met some new authors, and I learned a lot of new books about the deep state, about politics, and kind of the dark side of government as well that I want to get into. Learning a lot of new authors' names and book names, and then of course getting to spend some time with George has been awesome as well. He's quite the talented guitarist, believe it or not, people.
Well, I'm sorry you had to live through that, my one or two songs. But this is, we're in Arlington here at this, not far from where I held up the Blackberry. We all drove by that when we came by, and I told Addy, hey, that's 1435, that's Arlington, courts and so forth. So which books, which authors? Well, I have 7 books. And then 4 of them are banned. And then one of our authors over here, Greg Clark, it came to speak. And then we've got a political consultant from Arlington, and we will only say his name is Brian. And then, of course, the great Peter Duke back there. We had Len Bracken, who is Len here yet? No. Len's not here yet. Wrote the 9/11 book.
I mentioned Henry Vincent's book earlier too. He was the original DC Madam, who was in jail for about 8 years after basically just an attack by the feds because of his kind of entrapment by Craig Spence, who was the Jeffrey Epstein of the DC pedophile network. So that was a Trine Day book. We talked about Trine Day Publishing this morning. Chris Milligan. And I actually did an interview with Chris Milligan. I forgot to mention on our broadcast this morning. If people want to check that out, he's an expert on the Skull and Bone Society and their connection to Yale and the Ivy League. So if people want to support Chris Milligan that way as well, you can. He actually just came out with his podcast. Chris Milligan did. So
yeah, his farm may be burning in Eugene, so our heart reaches out to him. We had a lot of people here, some new folks like Greg. But a lot of people here who've attended several Charrettes. You're a newbie, you're a rookie here. Our process, are we working hard to try to get better at telling the truth, or would you say, and have you learned anything while you've been here?
Yeah, I think the way that you hold court, George, is really good because it's a very collective. You just want to get those ideas thrown out there, try to find the best idea. And earlier today, when we were at the George Washington's Masonic Temple, George and I were discussing just the clockwork model that Peter Duke uses, who's right here, where you go around the clock. And George was explaining from his own point of view as a protagonist in his own story. In independent journalism, his discoveries, and the most recent kind of event that was really big was actually a step back where YouTube banned George, as we know.
Right. So we had a chance to tell my story a little bit. We had Len Bracken, author of several books, do a short lecture today. It was about a 7-8 minute thing about COVID and in historical reference to other false flags, and I thought that was very good. 9/11, potentially Pearl Harbor, etc.
Yeah, he talked about the Lusitania with World War I, the Maine, USS Maine with the Spanish-American War, and then I think he also mentioned the Poland radio station in World War II as well.
Oh yeah, to the invade Poland, where they faked and they said they were a Polish radio station where Hitler's people provoked the invasion of Poland. And I'm also thinking of, he talked about the anthrax vials from Colin Powell. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, and the letter
and
as
9/11,
well.
Of course.
Was it death to Israel, death to the U.S.?
Yeah.
Letter.
Where he was just repeating Curveball's allegations, which we now know Curveball was just a guy who knew a guy named Tyler Drumheller that created the... But in Len's analysis that you heard, what I got out of that was how much more social control and how much more this affects the lives of everyday Americans than any of those wars. Unless you went off to war, you really didn't feel the effects. You might go to a scrap drive or something like that, but this, you're locked down in your house, you got tag and trace on your phone, you've got potentially now new technologies, new vaccines being tried on you, you can't interact socially, you can't go back to work, you can't go to the library, that sort of thing. You see a good comment there? Oh, great to see folks engaging. Yes, okay, great. No, that's good. Yeah, I leave them up until another one comments.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of folks here from the previous one. Greg, you came in late. This is Greg Clark, author of American Watersheds. We have to go brief, so I'm going to just give you kind of a 30-second clip here to tell me what you think of the process so far.
Well, I think this is what I've actually dreamed of this. So you actually had one making one of my dreams come true, and I talked about this before actually George made it a reality because, the people that stay alone in this, I feel bad for them because we really have to all work together, and we all have different connections. I was just telling about the Young Americans for Liberty and their 250,000 organizers, or, if you want to search this or that. I just think that, look how much we've all grown in the last 3 or 4 years. I think all of us can say that we've learned quite a lot in the last 4 years. And so I think we all have to start working together. And I just really think that by sharing our shows and getting our messages out and sharing our audiences, and that's really a dream come true. And that's what I just love, and I love seeing these young people, and that's what that's why I was talking about the Young Americans for Liberty.
You've got a great story in the sense that your grandfather started the UAW and also was a key guy in the Teamsters. So that's been fun in terms of, and this book about American watersheds, or people who made a big difference in American history. I'll just leave it at that. You can go to AmericanWatersheds.com. But would you like to add anything into that? Again, unfortunately brief. But
yeah, I really want everybody to go back and read that Union history because this is all just a repeat. Everything I see is a repeat, and the answers were the same. But back then, we had to have a president, we had to have a governor, and we had to have great organizers and leaders, and to be able to deal with infiltrators, which we always get. So that's just a great story. But it's the globalist. The globalist. If you want to see what a globalist world looks like, you need to read that because we were living under the tyranny of globalism until the very first strike, which allowed collective bargaining, and then all the unionism came across all of the American and was called the strike heard around the world. But I love the fact that it wasn't political, it wasn't involving the organized crime or any of those things. It was really just our right in our. We had to all stand together, and it was not just the men; it was the women, and the women actually won the strike. So. It's just a wonderful, wonderful story.
Oh, yeah. I remember the GM strike where all the women ended up doing the thing. So I'm going to do a quick recap of everybody here. Greg, thank you very much. Addy, I wanted to ask you just a few more questions about your are you going to be coming to Michigan?
Yeah, I'm going to try to be coming to Michigan. It's going to be, where are we going? What city exactly?
I don't know yet, but I think it's going to be near Detroit. I want to go on the water somewhere near Detroit so the Canadians can get to us easily.
Okay. I'm actually going to be in Buffalo, New York for the next month, starting on Wednesday with my colleague Shrimp Zoo. People want to check out our podcast we got going together. And Buffalo, I learned, is quite close to Detroit and to Michigan, where we're going to have our next charrette, where Detroit Dave, as I call him, is going to be hosting. So I'm going to try to make it out there if anybody from the Midwest wants to come up and meet up with us. But yeah, just feel grateful to learn from the authors I met here today, like George, like Mr. Clark, and Mr. Bracken as well, talking about the current situation we're in with this pandemic and the lockdown and the increase in the police state, really.
Yep. Okay, well, there you have it, everyone. We thank you for joining us. This is the bar, by the way, where I met Deep Blackberry, and we had that 4-hour conversation where he left the phone, and then I walk over and have my picture taken by Jason and give him the phone to let him examine it, and then we give it back to him the next day. We go down Wilson Street. You can walk there from here, and we give him the phone. And we have a high-priced media consultant here tonight that's a friend of Peter Duke's, and they work right there in that building. And just to encapsulate what Brian said is, we pay monkeys to throw shit and monkey shit, and then we film them doing it to make our opponents look bad. And I thought, oh my God, you could consult some of the people on YouTube. You would be perfect for YouTube. So I'll get a couple of comments here. I saw Neighborhood News Hour was mentioning our Smith Munt. We were talking about the NDAA today. We walked by on King Street the MDAA, which is the Missile Defense Advisory Council, where people are recommending how missiles should be deployed and anti-aircraft or anti-missile missiles should be deployed. Amazing that that's a cutout. That's a CIA cutout. Not a quarter-mile walk from where we're at the George Washington Masonic Temple. It is something that you can feel palpably here in Arlington. You can feel it over in Alexandria. That's all for right now. I just want to let you know all the great stuff that's happening. And we'll talk to you a little bit later here live from Arlington, Virginia.